Ah, looks like that's working over on YouTube. Copy the stream over to Facebook. Ah, looks like that's working over on YouTube. Copy the. Ah, looks like that's working over on YouTube. Hush.
Yeah, it's
All
gonna
right.
delay 3 seconds past the recording on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a minute since we've used the old YouTube for the live streaming uh for the live streaming event, but that's where we are today. The B-side sessions are back. So thanks everybody for joining us here this evening. I appreciate it. My name is Nicholas James Thomasma. I'm the executive director for the Michigan Music Alliance. We are a nonprofit organization that encourages growth in the Michigan music community. And we provide professional development opportunities through a range of programming and events. Events include our industry lunches, which are quarterly and happening around the state. And then our programming includes the Music Econ Summit, which is a 3 day music and business event in Grand Rapids, April 11 through 13, where you can learn a lot of different things about the music industry in similar fashion to things like the B-side sessions, which is, of course, our flagship educational program, the thing that we've become known for and the thing that we've been doing for many years, and the thing that we haven't done in quite some time. So it's great to be back with another episode of the B-side sessions, and I'm thrilled to be able to present to you today our good friend Chris, who's been with us before for the B-side sessions and is just a great community organizer and also music business enthusiast. I know that the artists and all of us are not always enthusiastic about business. And so we're very fortunate in our community to have people like Chris who do enjoy the business side of things and then also helping other artists in our community. So, first of all, welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for the introduction, and then thank you everyone for attending tonight. I know we're surrounding Michigan areas and up, down, east, west, south, north, or maybe elsewhere too. Let us know where you're from in the comments. And let's get started here, right? So this B-side session is planning your release, which is like one of the most fun things about releasing your music is just the planning stages. So a little bit about me, my company, um, like like Nicholas said, is kind of based around Michigan. So I operate in the Southeast Michigan area, but it's a Michigan music company. So my name of my company is called Catch and Play Songs. Sort of focus on three different areas: artist development, music marketing, and community building. So I help surrounding artists all around Michigan and do a wide variety of programming for them all around the state. So, music business education. I mostly work with musicians, artists, producers, and then I also have a kind of help to aspiring business professionals, people that are looking to enter the business as well. So, lots of community building around the state with different types of events. I'll be plugging later in the presentation those types of events that are public that you can attend. But yeah, let's get started here with our B-side session. So, talking about planning our release here. So, anybody know the artist that's on this little meme here? I like to make my teaching fun. So, for those that don't know, that's Beyonce, and she won a Grammy this year for her album Cowboy Carter. One of the things that I think most artists or bands struggle with, especially when they're just starting out, is just kind of realizing that there's a longevity to planning your release. And this isn't necessarily a short-term strategy that you should have, but rather kind of find a way to lengthen the time of your release, right? And with that comes planning, right? So there's some challenges that kind of come with maybe just posting the song and hoping that it hits the market and the listeners and your fans and whoever you're looking to pitch for your music, right? So we live in an age in technology and in sort of the digital age where we have short attention spans, we're constantly blasted with media and information on our phones and apps. Um, every time that you post something, you're at the mercy of this thing called the algorithm. And essentially, the algorithm boosts or doesn't show your post depending on the time of day, the impressions that it's getting, or whether the app finds it interesting and relevant content. Um, and then lastly, the kind of challenging, of why it's kind of like hard a little bit is there's just oversaturation in the market, right? So even just last year, I pulled this from Luminate, which is a music data company. They have an end of year report, but 99,000 songs are uploaded to streaming services each day. So that's a lot of music being uploaded and being pushed that's looking to get eyes, looking to get listeners, looking to get new fans, right? So you're wanting in your strategy to set yourself up for success. Sort of think the long-term strategy of this, right? Um, Building your fandom and your community, right? Not just releasing the song, say song out loud, and hoping that it reaches the person, right? But you have multiple shots at the goal, right? You have more visibility, right? And then you're able to, with this planning of your release and having these posts that are coming out about your release, you're able to attract new fans, right? So as you're kind of creating these viral moments or things are catching on, you now have sort of a funnel to tell your story, right? Which is the whole aspect of planning your release. So the meme kind of says, when consistency is more important than a viral moment, right? We're talking about kind of just having multiple shots to reach your fans, right? But when you have a viral moment, that you have content to provide those new fans and listeners. So to start our B-side session, these are the topics that I'm going to go over. The first one, I'm going to assume that if you are looking to release your music, that you already have your finalized mix and master. So you've done the recording, you've worked with a producer, a recording engineer in the studio, and you have the song in an audio file ready to upload. The next thing is sort of the cover art and the concept of that album, right? So oftentimes when you're uploading a song, it's going to ask you for the cover art, but also when you're kind of thinking this long-term strategy, think about the concept of this. Does this have any common themes? Is the purpose of the album making a statement? Sort of think of that as you're kind of bringing together your strategy. The next thing, these are two next topics are kind of tied together. Registering your music, right? Making sure that when your song is played, that you get paid for it. And then the next sort of thing that comes with that is picking your distro. You're also called, your DSP. That's where you upload the tracks, right? That get to Spotify or Apple Music or Deezer. Once you have the recordings and your album and your cover art and maybe a little idea of what this album is going to look like, the story that you're going to be telling, start to think about your marketing plan, right? It's oftentimes in the music business, it's called the rollout, because essentially you're kind of like rolling out the carpet of all of your plans. And with that kind of comes some different types of pitching, right? Maybe specifically to the DSPs, right? The digital service providers, different types of playlists that you might want to pitch for to attract new fans, attract new listeners, your social media strategy, and then kind of a general blanket, your PR and your outreach. So some examples that I brought together for this B-side session, all of my examples here today are all Michigan or have some type of Michigan roots. So I really wanted to bring it home to the mitten by providing some examples that hit close to home. So these are three different artists that are from Michigan that kind of outline this idea of a concept. The first one is Shigeto. He's an electronic artist based in Detroit. His album was named Cherry Blossom Baby, and it's sort of centered around one, his roots tied to his family and his culture, but also it's a tribute to all the Detroit musicians that are on the record too. This cherry blossom thing is a very sacred thing. And it kind of tells the story of paying tribute to his story, his family. The next artist is Stoop Lee. He's an R&B rapper based in Detroit. He came up with this album based off of the Pokemon series. So I don't know if any people are here who are familiar with the video game Pokemon, but there's different versions of Pokemon. So there's like an emerald version, there's a sapphire version, there's a blue version, there's a yellow version. So kind of taking this passion of nostalgia and interest and telling that story in the record, right? So that's kind of part of who he is. So that's what's coming out in his release. The third example I really love to use is a Detroit singer-songwriter named Charity. And the thing about Charity is the branding is always consistent. There's always consistent colors that make her stand out that she puts in with all of her releases. Charity wears all of this like orange hair, and you can notice in her just most of her recent release is that everything in that background is kind of has this orange tint and flavor to it, right? So that's things to consider when you're coming up with an album art. Is this cohesive? Is this telling a theme? Is this kind of telling the story, right? Because it's a visual thing, and that kind of makes somebody want to listen more or listen to your music for the first time. So the first thing that I kind of want to talk about in our stages of this B-side session is just registering your music, right? You want to get paid, right, for your music. So when it is played, you will get a thing of what's called a royalty, right? And that will come off of a royalty statement where either it's played in a live setting, it's played on the radio, it's uploaded on YouTube. Every time that that song is played, you get a royalty payment of that. And there's different types of royalty payments. If you're looking at just the basics of uploading your song, there's two forms here, right? There's two parts of this, two parts component. The sound recording, so like the actual recording, the mix, the master, right? And then the underlying composition. So that's like your music and the lyrics. And there's different types of PROs, which are called performing rights organizations, that collect these royalties on your behalf. So, for example, there are three PROs. One of them is ASCAP, the second one is BMI, and the third one is SESAC. And you can sign up directly to have them collect your royalties on your behalf. Kind of going to the right side, there's different types of mechanical royalties. So if you've ever had printed sheet music, that's a great example of a mechanical royalty. You would get a percentage off that. Back in the day, they had piano rollers. It's kind of the kind of deal of the mechanical in the name. There's this is actually run by the government. It's called the MLC. It's called the Mechanical Licensing Collective. So before you're kind of uploading your songs to these data platforms, make sure you have this royalty collection set up. Once you have that, you can insert your metadata, right? And there's a couple different things once you have the recording that you can upload your music to. And essentially what they do, the distributor, is upload it to all the channels where you can listen to music. So Spotify, Apple Music, those are two main DSPs, right? So popular distro company that's used with independents a lot is DistroKid. I've also heard a lot of people use CD Baby and TuneCore. They all have their different variables and costs. So I recommend doing your research and seeing what's best for you. What the distributor is going to ask you when you're uploading your song is essentially like your credits, the name of the song, the artist, if there's any songwriters on the song, right? And maybe even it will ask you like the genre of music, so it can sort of characterize this music. And it's going to give you a code that you can track to pay out your royalties. So once we registered our music, once we know the idea of who we want to pick for our distributor to upload to these streaming services, I'm using a Michigan example of anybody familiar with the assembly line. Henry Ford, right? The reason why we can get around this state is because we have a car, right, that has 4 wheels to it, right? So start with the assembly. So think about, you need 4 wheels to drive this actual car. You need the story, the concept of the album, right? You need the content, which is going to be your social media rollout, right? That's going to be the pictures and videos and the cover art. You need a fan engagement element. You need to be talking with your audience, talking with your fans, talking with your community. And then lastly, the plugs and activations. So once the song is out, you have a way to amplify it, right? To get more people to view it, to get more people to share it, right? But also it goes in different markets, right? That you're not maybe used to, or maybe there's not a certain demographic following you yet, right? So it's important to plug in different avenues, different roads, right? That can lead you all down the same path to success. So sort of kind of with this car idea, right? If we assemble the 4 wheels of this car, we can drive it, right? So think about that as being like your strategy, right? The direction. You now have a path, a clear path to go down. You have a map, right? Of the points that you want to check and go, right? You can stop this car, you can tell it to go, right? And when things are going really well, you can put it in drive. You can go full throttle, right? You can push something, right? Maybe you're thinking wanting to push an ad on something that's going viral, right? To get it to be viewed more. Or you can change your strategy, right? Change the strategy direction. Maybe the stuff that you're uploading isn't hitting or resonating, right? So you can change as you're going along with your strategy. So what that kind of segues into is the concept of the album, the story, right? Now you're just organizing it, right? So sort of organize all of your assets together. What do you have to promote this album, promote this single? You need to organize all your assets, right? And there's a couple of different platforms that help you with this, right? For example, Airtable. That's a data platform where you can directly upload and schedule things on a calendar. I do this with artists all the time on consultations. I'll upload Airtable and I will just type content ideas, right? That could be behind the scenes content in the studio, right? That could be a day in the life, right? Any type of visuals that you have to promote the album, right? Maybe there's a lyric video. Maybe you want to do a cover song. Maybe you want to do a live performance, right? You can schedule all of these posts in advance, right? Facebook and Instagram are owned by Meta. You can use Meta Business Suite to schedule these posts. So you might have other things to do during the week or the month, right? But you can kind of spend a Sunday or when you have an hour of your time to schedule all of these posts, right? So that they upload, right? So you kind of have this stream going. Another website is called Later, right? I've also heard Monday, right? Where you can directly upload your content to be scheduled. Start writing down your content ideas, right? Maybe come up with a calendar where you can specifically say, hey, I want my release to come out on the 30th. What are the stop and checkpoints that I'm going to do to promote this release? And what are the specific days, right? So now I'm leading a listener and I'm also engaging with the audience, right, in that way. There's not necessarily a certain path of how many times you should be posting, but rather be consistent about it, right? I don't want to post on the 1st of the month and then just here at the 30th of the month, right? That's not going to work out, right? It's not going to work out. The eyes aren't going to see it, right? There's not this anticipation to lead up to follow up, right? And there's not this engagement element, right? We'll get a flat tire that way. So as you're thinking about your album release, think about these 3 words: tease, launch, and amplify, right? So you've seen this not just in the music industry, but maybe in a movie, right? Where they give you a trailer. They only give you a little sneak peek. But that makes you want to see the movie. And then as that movie is getting closer to the release, you're getting more content, you're getting interviews, you're getting podcasts, right? Maybe a recording, right? That's launching this release, right? Once you amplify the release, is there a way where people can engage and dress up or act the characters, right? But think about that in terms of like music, right? There's parallels to these industries. So as you're creating your content, what you're going to want to sort of take into consideration is just defining what you want to post on the platforms that you want to post, right? Define the content, define the platform. Once you have that material, you want to gather that. You want to have a way to upload this content and a way to interact, right? And then the last sort of slide with that is to share it, right? Share it to your listeners, share it to your audience, um, that sort of thing. I took this from a great jazz musician, Olivia Van Gogh. As you're building your social media planning strategy, you're gonna kind of have to realize that there's some important things that you need to know about why this is important. The social media engagement is essential, one, to being found, for other people to discover you, right? To build this community of fans that will support your art and pay for it, to secure opportunities, right? Maybe that's a concert that you want to play, or a slot that you want to fill, or a sync opportunity. Start thinking about like those ideas. Fan engagement may include like this, like once you've uploaded it, what does fan engagement look like, right? Maybe you have an idea surrounding a way of telling how people can participate in things. You're telling somebody like, hey, I'm doing this challenge, right? I have this special dance. Maybe you're asking them their opinion of things along the way. I personally really like that. If an artist is posting something, they're like, hey, do you like this in blue or do you like this in red? You know, I feel like I'm part of the conversation. Resharing the posts, right? Somebody tags you in the post, reshare it, but also find a way to intentionally respond to comments, right? Acknowledge that somebody put the effort to respond, right? You're wanting to build that community. So I have a case study here, but I'll pause if there are any questions so far. Just want to, a lot of information there.
I guess I just want to chime in and say that we do have a Q&A at the end, and I am making notes to ask you questions. So
Okay.
if anybody else wants to jump in, you're all more than welcome to. Anybody that's
Yeah.
interested in the meeting. Otherwise, we'll get through and we'll get questions at the end.
Awesome. So I'll just keep going here then. So here's a case study of a Detroit artist named Allie Evanson. She's a singer-songwriter. One thing that I kind of wanted to showcase here is there's some consistent things both in the concept and the rollout strategy, right? She released this album project called Blue Super Love, and during the whole project and release, she had these consistent blue colors, right? So you can notice that the vinyl is like this distinct blue. Every live performance and some of the video and the contents that we posted, she was wearing this hat. So now she kind of like has like really strong branding, right? So when I'm seeing this color blue, maybe I'm associating it with this artist, right? You're being easily found, right? Recognizable. Moving forward with that, right? Here are some examples of some fan engagement with social media, right? There's a indie band called Michigander. Jason Singer is the head of that, right? He did a show at St. Andrews Hall. For that release show of the album, there was an engagement opportunity with this. There's a local coffee roaster just down the road from me called Sabbath Coffee Roasters. And with that sort of participation and brand partnership, if you bought a bag of coffee, you got entered to win a show. So your content should always have like a call to action, right? And then maybe an incentive for people to participate, right? Maybe I love Michigander, but I also really love coffee, right? So there's some parallels and some cross-pollination that you could do in certain markets to release your single or album. Jack White from Detroit, right? Formerly of the White Stripes. Something that he did on his Supply Chain Issues tour was ask fans to create the poster for the town or city he was going to. So that's fan created art, right? I'm part of the conversation. Maybe I'm an artist myself, right? I create something. I now have this lifelong partnership if he picks my poster, right? I'm this lifelong fan, right? Last artist, spent some time in Detroit, Lizzo. She had a song called That's About Damn Time. And it had this dance element to it, right? It was very viral on TikTok. An influencer actually posted the dance and she responded to it by doing the dance. So now people could actively participate, but what happens with that? They're actively sharing it. They're telling their friends. There's a word of mouth that's going through. So that's kind of some examples of fan engagement that you can use as you're sort of plugging your single or album release, that you can find different industries to partner with, right? That have the same audiences or some similarity of interests. One question that I get a lot too is just running ads, right? Paid advertising. One thing that I would recommend that you all check out is this platform called Chartmetric. And essentially what Chartmetric does is it organizes all of your data for you, both your streaming data from Apple and Spotify and other DSPs to your social media. And it tells you where your fans are, right? So you kind of, when you're doing a paid advertising campaign, you want to be specific about the questions that you're trying to market to these fans, right? So setting a goal, right? One of them being defining your target audience, right? Maybe my fans really like skateboarding. Maybe my fans are between the ages of 16 to 24. Meta Business Suite can be very specific about the fans that you want to target, right? Maybe there's some cross pollination of an artist that you sound like that you can tag. Be like, well, I know if they like the Beatles, that they'll like my song, because it sounds like the Beatles, right? Or if it's influenced by that, right? When you're creating this paid advertising campaign, make sure that it's eye-catching, right? That it makes me want to take an action, right? Maybe that's a creative visualizer that you have. Maybe there's an incentive if I click on the link. Maybe I get like a free merch or tickets to a show, right? By having this call to action, right? Maybe you're pulling people towards a certain thing. Buying tickets, doing a pre-save, right? You want this call to action, right? So kind of think about step by step, right? Setting the goal, understanding the audience that you want to market to, right? It's got to be creative. It's got to be eye-catching, right? Everyone's kind of doing this on their phones, right? With the social media. So you kind of want to find something that's going to gather their attention, right? Take a post that you're already doing well with on your rollout campaign and boost that post. If you know it's working well organically, chances are if you do paid advertisement, it's going to work even more. Asking questions will give you answers, right? Who is my current audience, right? Look at Chartmetric, right? Maybe I have some different types of interests. That Michigander coffee example, maybe one of them, right? What platforms do my fans use, right? Maybe they're all on Facebook. Maybe they're all on TikTok. I want to make sure that I'm hitting those platforms. One thing that Chartmetric does is if your song is going viral, let's say on TikTok, it will show you. So it'd be like, oh, I got to be on TikTok, right? Because my song's being used on that platform. And then also asking yourself, like, what do my fans like, right? It's an interactive conversation. Sort of kind of thinking like, if they like a certain points where you do like a cover song once a week, right? Maybe you do that pretty consistently up until the release, right? Just continuing that conversation. Another topic that comes into mind with planning a release is your pre-saves. Pre-saving is when a fan pre-saves your song, like literally pushes the button and says, I want to add this to my playlist in my streaming services when the song comes out. And there's different platforms that allow you to do this. I always say if you're doing a pre-saving campaign, there's a couple different platforms that you can use. Listen to, A popular one is Linkfire. Essentially, it just makes it very easy for people to import their data. And then when the song comes out, they already get a direct message, right? So you're not having to fight that algorithm, right? Use incentives for that, right? Oftentimes people will put the pre-save link out there, but I'm like, why should I do that? So find a way to be creative about it, right? Maybe you're giving them something exclusive for taking that. You're rewarding them, right? By pre-saving the song. You can do this on Spotify. It's called pre-save. On Apple Music, it's called pre-ad. I've seen a lot of artists that are looking just to organize their links, especially on Instagram, to use a platform called Linktree. And essentially that collects all of your links all in the same place. So you could have point towards your pre-save campaign. You can point towards a music video. You can point towards a mailing list, right? And have multiple kind of checkpoints that you can have to reach your fans and followers. So moving forward with that, you're going to need some advancement with some of these platforms, right? Some of them you can just pitch openly as your song comes out, but Spotify requires advanced pitching, right? So it's very important to do your research on the platform. Spotify for Artists is a really great resource on how to do this, right? You need a certain timeline in advance to pitch your song to the curators, right? The people actually at Spotify making the playlists. There's different types of editorial playlists out there. Ones that are made by the users on the platform are often called user-generated playlists, right? Finding out and doing your research is going to save you a lot of time, right? Maybe you have an Excel sheet or just a list written down. If you're going to reach out to these people in advance, that you know that your song's coming out. There's different types of playlists. There's ones that are specifically like what they call the tastemakers. And then there's also on the platforms, there's algorithmic playlists, right? They're generated by AI or they're generated by the system. It says, hey, this song is going viral, it's getting a lot of plays, I'm going to add it to this playlist, right? There's nothing that stops you from starting your own playlist too, right? And maybe that's a way to build your community where you start uploading other people's songs, right? And maybe you put your song on the top. So you're getting that stream there. The types of examples, right? So we're talking about like the Pacemaker playlist, the Spotify editorial ones, right? There's Rap Caviar, for example. The Daylist, that's an AI generated playlist, right? So that's just generated off the platform, right? That says, hey, you might be in a certain mood for 80s funk groove on a Monday on a boat. That's kind of how Daylist works. It's kind of fun with that, but your song might get uploaded to that because you've categorized this metadata of this song, right? And sort of attracted this type of listener. There are user-generated playlists. A really great one in this state is called #MishSongs, started by Nate Durow, but there's also a couple different other curators, Nicole LeRae being one of them. And they are uploading and supporting Michigan music. So every time there's a new release, they're like, hey, who's released music today? So it's kind of a community-generated playlist, but it's also a really great way to find out in the state, right, who's uploading music. Maybe there's some similarities of some bands and everything that you have. Next step, kind of going forward here in your release planning, is generating an EPK. This is going to start talking about like your pitching, right? You're doing an email. So if you want to do an email that's not going to be like 4 paragraphs long, you're going to want to create a EPK. So an EPK is an artist resume that sort of combines the following things. Your music, the most important, right? Links to the music, having your biography available, right? The certain branding, any social links, right? You can literally put them as dots and link them in, right? I've done this on Canva many times. When I was at Warner Music Group, we created artist one sheets all the time, right? Where it kind of had a paragraph that told a little bit about the artist, the important part, right? The hype about it, right? Why should I care about that, right? What do they have coming up, right? Maybe they performed with this certain artist or they've had this certain deal. You can pitch this to press. You can pitch this to sync. You can pitch this to brand partnerships. And then again, this is just another way for fans to see you, but also attract new listeners and new audiences. Pitching examples, right, specific to Michigan, right? If you're sort of thinking about different types of publications that are out there, there are really great Michigan curated playlists. One of them being Local Spins, that's on the west side of state, but they cover all types of Michigan music, right? John is an amazing guy, and so are the writers. The Sonic Coast, right? Brian runs this internet radio platform. And specifically, they play Michigan music, right? So you've done your research, right? Be like, hey, I listened to this song on the Sonic Coast. I think my song would be really great for this play, right? There's different types of publications out there, right? One of the board members on the Michigan Music Alliance is Lori Stratton, right? And runs a publication called the Stratton Set List. There's different mediums where you can be found, right? Not just press, not just radio, but also on video and like podcasting form, right? Another great board member, John, shout out to John Bomarito, right? He runs this interview style playlist podcast at Grove Studios in Ypsilanti, right? It's called Acoustic Alternatives, right? And he invites guests, many of them from Michigan, to talk about and play their art, right? So that has a following in itself. That's maybe some place that you want to pitch to in your release. Another great, just talking about specific radio stations that have specific tastemakers and curators. WDET in Detroit has like 6 different music shows. And one of them is like specifically related to Michigan music. Jeff Mile runs that program. On the west side of the state, we have 88.1 FM, WYCE. Again, get to know these curators, get to know these tastemakers, listen in, right? This is an opportunity to have a platform to an existing audience that already digs this types of stuff. Is you're kind of thinking about maybe a long-term strategy, maybe your music really fits well with like a movie or like a TV or a brand, right? Assemble Sound, based in Detroit. You could pitch your music for sync licensing opportunities. So that's getting your music placed in film, TV, what's called a sync license. And that's another way to get paid, but also to have visibility. Lizzo being one of them, right, had a sync placement in a Netflix TV show, and that's what started her career. The song was called Truth Hurts. So that's another way to sort of build your fandom, build your audience. I often get the question a lot when I'm releasing music or I'm managing an artist or consulting an artist, right? They ask this question: should I just be releasing singles, or can I just drop the full album, right? And the answer is you can do both. But there's a strategy, remember, with this, right? We're driving this car, right? We want to have this longevity, right? We want to have a nice road trip, right? We want to be able to hit all these touch points, right? All these stopping points. There's a sort of illustration. It's called the waterfall strategy, and essentially means like that water is going to consistently run, right? So as you're kind of feeding this content, feeding this marketing strategy, right, you want that flow to sort of happen, right? And one of the ways that you can sort of create that flow is by releasing singles, right, of an existing project, right? You have the first single that comes out, right? And there's a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of content with that. Then the second single comes out, right? Again, feeding, right? You're kind of creating this this sort of trail, you know, to build your fans, build your audience. And oftentimes I see the single release before I see the final project. But what that kind of happens at the end is just this really great marketing and planning a release strategy, because you've been specific about where you want to market. You have different types of shots at the goal, right? You're at the mercy of the algorithm. Maybe the first one doesn't hit, but the second one does, right? And when the second one does, people start paying attention. And now you have this flow of content, right? You have this storytelling that's going on. So kind of just wrap up the presentation, and then we'll go into Q&A, like Nicholas said. There's some key takeaways with this process. One of them is it's an ongoing process. This is kind of once your music is out, this is something that you can continue to do, right? There's always going to be new fans, right? And just because you released a song a year ago and I just listened to it today, it's new to me, right? So there's an ongoing process, right? But use trial and experience, right? You might have a certain post that goes really viral, and then you might have a post that you're like, oh, this is going to be really hot, and it does nothing, right? So see what works and see what doesn't, right? But kind of listen to uh, what the feedback is with your release. You want to be doing your own research, right? Find out what best fits your music. Maybe there's a specific publication or a radio station that plays the genre of music that you're listening to, right? You're wanting to research the different types of stakeholders in this industry, right? And kind of decide what fits best for your career, right? What aligns with you, what aligns with your core values, your branding, your release, and that you're okay with. The third being use your network, right? It's said all the time in the music business that this is a people's business. It's about collaboration, but it's also about the people, right? So one of the things that you kind of want to be doing at any point in your career is building a strong community, and also supporting the come up of people around you along the way because they can help you with your career, right? Maybe that's a opening spot on the road. Maybe that's a connection that they have to an existing firm or a stakeholder. You're going to want to plan ahead for your release, right? Have a time-based plan, right? And that content calendar is going to help you out with that, right? You're going to have specific goalposts in mind to be able to hit the home run, right? Use SMART goals. SMART to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, right? So start to get specific about what your needs and your expectation and your vision is, right? All the time in this industry, you're going to ask of something and don't be surprised if it's a no, right? It doesn't mean I hate you, but it means maybe not right now or I'm not interested. Keep going, right? You're going to want to be realistic with your kind of needs and wants, but also at the end of kind of it, you're ultimately looking to do with this planning of this release is just curate experiences. You're sharing the experience of your art, and that kind of has to hit the market of people that you're looking to hit. Um, so, with that, I thank the Michigan Music Alliance, and we will open it up to a Q&A. I also have a link to my website. I have a book that I wrote. If you're looking to do like the journaling and filling out a thing that you can buy, you just scan that QR code. But you can also find me on my website. You know, follow me on Instagram at Catch and Play Songs, and then my website is catchandplaysongs.com. So thank you.
Wow, thank you, Chris. First of all, I just want to say like wow, because that was a lot of information. I'm sure everybody who's in our Zoom room here can attest to that. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot to handle. So I have like a whole list of questions, but before I get into my questions, I want to turn it over to our community here, the people that are in the Zoom room. You should be able to just unmute and speak. So, does anybody have a question for Chris?
Yeah, I do have a question. Real quick. Yeah, my name is Scoob, man. I'm a more like artist management coordinator out here in Grand Rapids, and uh, I have a question because I just recently got done dealing with a number of artists for a huge project, and more so, I just want to ask a question that I feel like I already know the answer to, but just getting an opinion. In the community is that how can your ego affect your career?
I think with ego, there's nothing wrong with having ego. It's actually a natural confidence thing. It's great to have confidence, right? But I think the balance of ego comes when you're focusing too much on yourself and not caring about what others think, right? Not considering your community. So as you're kind of like balancing like the ego type thing, right? It's okay to be confident. It's also okay to be proud of your work, right? But when you're kind of sort of turning the face of, you know, not hearing somebody, not being supportive, it becomes an unhealthy ego where you think that the world is centered around you. And for an existing career in this business, you're going to have to work with a lot of people, some of them which you may love and some of them which you might not like at all, right? But it's important to be humble, right? And to kind of practice um, kind of an evaluation, you know, of your ego,
Yeah.
you know. So doing checks and balances, I think, is helpful in this industry.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, yeah, I have quite the experience dealing with egos. I just got done managing over 20 artists at once. So balancing and communicating with all the different egos is that you know, I definitely ran into individuals that definitely felt that the world revolved around them, and I had to humble them real quick because it don't work like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree. It doesn't work like that. Like it is I think it's like Chris said, like it's natural to have an ego. As a matter of fact, I'd even be willing to say you have to have an ego in this business. This is a business of egos that you're essentially saying, look at me. And so it is important to be confident, but also this is a business of relationships, and you're going to work with people again and again and again throughout your life. So if you think about that right from the get-go, that this is a relationship, that's a healthier way to approach the business of it. Um, there's also countless examples of people whose ego is out of control and they're
Yeah.
still successful. And I'll admit I don't always understand that,
Yeah.
but that is the business, right? Again, it's a lot of people who are saying, "Look at me," and that's the world that we're operating in.
Yeah, I like to add one last thing. Is just that I feel like there is a very thin line between respect and burning bridges.
It's very bad to burn bridges in this business because you're relationship building, right? So navigate that on how you can not be in the same circles as those people. You can choose to operate in different spaces, but just be aware about that when you're going through relationships because it's a revolving door. You'll see these people later on.
All right, do we
I
have?
had a question.
Yeah, sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Hey, this is Joe Riley in Detroit. Shout out to Nick and Dee Dee, fellow Earthwork artists. And Chris, nice to meet you. Thanks for your presentation. Yeah, a couple years ago, I released my first album in like 7 or 8 years. So much had changed in that time about how to release, and everything is now streaming. And so I'm preparing to release a new album. It's the first time I've released like a couple singles ahead of the album, so this is like a new experience for me too. Um, a friend told me about Submit Hub as a way to like pitch your new release to playlist curators, and I've had a little bit of success with that. I'm wondering if there's other similar or better platforms for like getting to those playlist curators. Like you mentioned a few of the different curators. Um, yeah, but how do you get your music to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Submit Hub is really great. I've had people use it, have some success with it. Um, in terms of like a resource, I would point to really just doing a DIY. Start local. Start noticing the people that are writing these articles, right? Become fans of them, right? Interact with them. Send them notes, even if it's not for your music, just saying that you like it. You sort of create the relationship with these people, right? Oftentimes they will have a public presence. They will have an Instagram that you can follow and they sort of engage with, right? Be in that comment section, be in that supportive. And then when you have that ask, there's a familiarity, there's kind of a trust with that, right? And they're able to kind of vet you in that way. The one thing that I will warn about Submit Hub, particularly when it comes to playlisting, is you cannot pay for your music to be playlisted. It is against the service terms in Spotify's terms that if you pay, it's called payola. So be cautious of that. But I really just start by doing it organically and then naturally kind of find what are like the natural music discovery places. I'm the Detroit curator for the Digilog. We'd have an artist discovery playlist where people can submit to. So that's an option, a resource. Start thinking about like independent things first, and then you can kind of build from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I saw your set with the earthwork at the Arc. It was amazing.
Oh yeah, thank you. That was a good show. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Do we have other questions for the audience? From the audience? All right. Well, in that case, I'll ask one. Thoughts on the best time of year to release an album or single or video or whatever? Because when we're talking about planning a release, like when is the best time of year to release music?
The You can definitely think in terms of quarterly basis. I mean, people have done this, but what I wouldn't recommend would be releasing your music in December because it's holiday season and you're just gonna get flooded by that existing market. So I would not plan to release around that. Oftentimes around touring schedule, most people don't tour in January. So if you're planning to have a lot of like shows or things around that time, it's a cold part of the year, and most people aren't coming out for that. So you definitely want to set yourself up for success. I know people that do it based on the theme of their album. Maybe there's some summery vibes. Maybe it's more spring, right? Playing off of the flowers, right? The nature. The natural decay that happens in this state when everything dies, right? That heartache, right? Could be played also in the fall, but also if you're in love or heartbreak, February is a great month for that too. You know, there's existing people that have felt all of those feelings. So to kind of sum that up, there isn't necessarily a right time, but also just think about what's at play happening culturally.
Yeah, I have to agree. There's not a right time, but December is probably the wrong time. Unless, of course, it's a holiday release, then it's got to be December. But one more thing about a December release is that your music is only new for so long. And if you release an album in, say, April, if it's April 2025, it's a new album until January. But if you release an album in December, it's only a new album until January because then it's last year's album, right? You know what I mean? If when it has a 2024 copyright on the album, it's last year's album, right? So time moves first of all, time's not real, but dates are. And so once you put a date on your release, it is kind of saying this is the timestamp on this. And so December is a tough time again, unless you're releasing a holiday release, and then it's probably the only time that you can do that. All right, so that brings up another question for me is touring and releasing an album. When should an artist plan a tour around a release?
Mhm. Yeah, so guess it depends if you're just releasing singles. Some people don't have like a full album release. Some people just release, here's a song here, here's a song there, right? And there's benefits and negatives to that. But also, if you're looking towards like a full album release, as you're sort of building your content, doing the singles, then the major work, right? I would say like it's always a great way to engage your fans to be like, hey, you've listened to the record, now hear me play it live. Here's an in-person experience. That's kind of what I left with at the end of the presentation is kind of where people are headed, where is they are looking to have experiences, and maybe there's a combination of all the marketing that you're doing that is part of that album release show. In terms of a general timeline, of when a single, like the marketing of a single, I've seen anywhere from like 3 to 4 weeks. I've seen like a full record be uploaded in 2 months, and that kind of gives you time, to one, build your audience, right? You have multiple shows when you book the show months out in advance to sort of advertise that, right? So you can be like, here's a new single, but wait, here's the cool in-person experience that's going to happen here, right? And you have multiple shots to kind of show that you're able to make every play count.
Great. This is kind of a personal question, but I'm just kind of wondering, like, are albums still relevant and should people release collections in a physical format?
Mm. Yeah, albums are definitely statements, I'd say they're a collection of works that are individual from it, but they complement each other. I'm still seeing full albums being released all over every genre. Bad Bunny just released an album in January, or a collection of where he was from, and that went over super well. So I would say it's dependent on the artist and where they're at, but if you have a full record and a full story to tell, I mean, that's just more marketing and more content. Um, I'd say for physical mediums, creating merch or creating CDs or creating vinyl or a t-shirt, right? There's something that you can do with this is you can ask your fans, right, to take an action, right? Whether it'd be like, hey, would you be interested if I put this on vinyl? Cool. If I put this on vinyl, maybe there's this exclusive opportunity that I get. I purchase, maybe I get to listen to it early. Maybe I get to listen before it even hits streaming, right? So that's talking about like an in-person experience, right? Um, Also, twofold of that, um, I would say there's always a demand for something physical, but have before you buy 1,000 physical mediums of copies, make sure that the market works, right? You're better to order small packages of something or ask people to pre-order for something than to have 1,000 t-shirts that 10 years later you still have.
Yeah, that's a common problem. I come from that like time period, that era when I put out my first CD, you had to order 1,000 CDs. You couldn't just order 100 copies or whatever. That was like the minimum is 1,000 CDs. And now I feel like the days of ordering 1,000 CDs are gone. Unless your pre-order campaign dictates that you order 1,000 CDs. Um, but with that said, the physical formats kind of have this nostalgic value, and we see that it's kind of coming back around. Like young people are getting into CDs and cassettes again. So I kind of wonder, you know, in this digital world where we're talking about a waterfall strategy of releasing one thing at a time, what's the ideal timeline for releasing an album? Say I'm going to roll out some singles and then I want a physical product. What do you think is an ideal timeline?
um, I'd say for a full record, it could be spread out for 3 months. You know, um, you would have 6 weeks of marketing with the singles, and then the final project. Maybe pick 3 or 4 singles off the record, and then have something at the end to release the full project. I mean, but that's just an incredible opportunity to build community, to build fandom, to have people engaged because they're looking forward to this record, right? Not just like, hey, new song coming out on the you release it on the first and then you actually upload it on the 30th and you have nothing in between, right? We don't want that to happen. We want this constant storytelling, this constant checking in, this kind of intimacy that comes with like, hey, I'm gonna check my phone and see if they've uploaded something today, or they dropped a new piece of merch, right? But if I want that, I have to buy it within a certain time frame. So you're kind of giving pressure, a little like positive pressure in that way. So to answer your question, I think like 3 months is pretty solid. It's pretty standard. I've seen it be released in 2.
Okay, great. Thanks for your opinion on that. Um, we're getting, it's been about an hour now, so I want to wrap things up. If there are any more additional questions from our Zoom audience, thank you for your participation and for being here. Now would be your opportunity to chime in. Otherwise, I do have another question that I'll ask. Okay. I don't see anybody jumping in. No, check in the comments to make sure there's no questions in the comments. So I'll ask you one final question before we send you on your way, um, which is basically, I'm an artist. I want to spend my time writing songs and playing shows. I don't necessarily want to spend all my time on social media or on various platforms. So if I'm only going to spend a very small amount of time, do you think that I should spend more time trying to focus on algorithmic success or building relationships with individual people?
I would answer that question by saying building relationships, because I kind of pointed out a little bit funny, that consistency is better than a viral moment. And the reason why that is because if you have a viral moment and you don't have content or a strategy behind that, it will just fall over, right? But your relationships last forever, and they're a never-ending wheelhouse of people. So investing in those relationships over time is going to help you with your career strategy, because you can reach out to those people, have certain asks, but also who do they know too. So it's in a relationship of like instead of like thinking transactional relationships, you really want to think about making community relationship building partnerships, um, because ultimately that's going to have longevity. You have people to turn to, you have people to ask of things, and that I would say is way better than trying to go viral. Not to say that it's not a great strategy to go viral. We want the content to reach a lot of followers, but that shouldn't be the overall goal.
That's exactly why I asked you that question, is I've heard so many people kind of have this idea of if I could just go viral, if I could just go viral. And I think Scoob wanted to chime in on this. Scoob, you got something for us?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. Everybody wants to go viral, and what people need to understand is that you have to have the work ethic. And there are a lot of artists out here that are very talented. Talent will get you to the door. It'll get you through the door. But if you don't have the work ethic, you're only going to get as far as your talent gets you. If you don't have the work ethic, it's not going to get you anywhere. And one thing that I've been noticing is like when individuals do go viral, is that they weren't ready. And they're asking for this attention, they're asking to be, to go viral, but they didn't put the work in to be prepared for it. So you can have an artist go viral, and then all of a sudden they're getting shows, and they haven't done a single performance in their life, and they get out there, and that one performance can either destroy their career or make their career. And the odds of it making their career are very low. Um, so like when it comes down to being viral, viral is great for attention, but at the end of the day, you still got to work, and those personal relationships that you make mean the most, because like bro said, is that it's that longevity. Longevity is going to matter more at the end of the day, and a lot of people are more focused on the short term stuff, that they fail to realize that the longevity is going to mean more at the end of the day. Short term is short term. It comes and it's past. You want to set yourself up for longevity, and it starts with putting the work in. But going viral is great, but it can hurt you.
100% resonate with that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I have to completely agree that that's it right there. I've got a lot of friends who have had viral success, Most of them don't really understand why they went viral or how, nor have they been able to figure out how to recreate that. And I've heard that kind of again and again, is that that's happened to them where the largest opportunity for success came to them at a time in their career where they weren't ready for it. And so that's a testament to that. Like it is about work ethic. It is about being prepared, knowing what you want and being ready and having a plan and following through on the plan. So I think that's a great place to put a pin in this conversation. I want to say thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight, everybody that's
Oh yeah.
participating on Zoom. Uh, great questions. Also great presentation, Chris. I thank you for your willingness to participate in our community here. The Michigan Music Alliance does have a few events coming up. We will be at Industry Lunch in Kalamazoo on April 4th, as well as Traverse City on July 25th, 24th rather. And in October 17th, we'll be in Detroit at the Logger House. So if you want to actually come out and see us in person, we can see you in an industry lunch. We're also presenting the Music Econ Summit, April 11 through 13, and this is 3 days of music and business and networking and showcase opportunities for in the Michigan music community. So we invite you to come to Grand Rapids and join us for that. We also have 3 more B-side sessions in the spring session coming up on March 11th. We'll be talking with Duke Sherrill about working with labels and major labels and what labels do in the modern music industry. March 25th, we'll be going through navigating artist management with Karita Miller, the lady with the golden ear. She's a Grammy voter and also an artist manager and just a wonderful person to talk to. She's got all the information for you. And then the last B-side session of the spring sessions will be on April 8th. We'll be talking to Katie K. Rangels about working with booking agents. And some of these people will be at the Music Econ Summit in Grand Rapids, April 11 through 13. So we'd like to see you there. We would love to hear your questions and to hear feedback about our events and our programming. So please feel free to reach out to me. And otherwise, thank you everybody for coming. Once again, thanks, Chris, for all of your work putting this presentation together. And we will see you all at the next B-side sessions. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'll see you guys at the Econ. I was there last year. I was pretty upset last year though. Like a lot of people that need to be there didn't go.
As we got to start somewhere, right, Scoop? So let's
Yeah,
get there this year, okay?
heck yeah.